Have you ever felt your whole mood change because of one person? One message lifts you. One silence ruins your day. One delay makes you anxious. One shift in someone's energy makes you question everything. That feeling is heavy, and after a while it becomes exhausting. Because at some point, it stops being simple care. It stops being ordinary hope. It becomes something deeper, something more draining. Your peace starts depending on what someone else does, says, or feels. That is why detachment matters. Not because you want to become cold. Not because you want to stop loving people. Not because you want to stop caring. Detachment is not the death of love. It is the protection of your inner peace. It means learning how to stay connected without losing yourself. It means caring without collapsing. It means loving without handing someone else complete control over your emotional world. And the first thing you have to see clearly is this. Attachment gives others power over your emotions. The moment you become attached in an unhealthy way, you start handing over power that should have stayed with you. Now your emotions begin to move according to someone else's behavior. If they reply, you feel relief. If they go quiet, you feel unsettled. If they come closer, you feel safe. If they pull away, your whole inner world starts shaking. That is the hidden danger of attachment. It teaches you to live emotionally dependent on what is happening outside you. You can feel it when a small action affects you more than it should. You check your phone too often. You replay conversations in your head. You search for signs. You start reading meaning into silence, delay, distance, and tone. And without noticing it, you begin allowing one person or one situation to decide whether your day feels light or heavy. That is not peace. That is emotional captivity. Because once your happiness depends on whether someone gives you attention, consistency, reassurance, love, or approval, you are no longer standing firmly inside yourself. You are standing on something unstable, something outside you, something you cannot fully control. This is why detachment is necessary. You need to return to a place where someone's presence can be beautiful but not required for your emotional survival. Where a situation can matter but not define your worth. Where love can exist but your peace does not disappear every time reality changes. This is where the shift begins. Instead of asking, why are they making me feel this way? You begin asking, why have I given this so much power over me? That question changes everything, because once you see that your emotions have been tied too tightly to something outside you, you can begin loosening that tie. You can begin returning to yourself. You can begin building an inner steadiness that does not vanish every time someone changes their mood, their attention, or their place in your life. That is where real detachment begins, not in pushing people away, but in refusing to hand them the keys to your emotional world. Attachment often comes from the ego. A lot of attachment does not begin with love. It begins with insecurity. It begins in that quiet place inside you that still feels not enough, still feels easily replaced, still feels shaken when someone seems more confident, more attractive, more successful, or more desired. And once the ego steps in, attachment becomes heavier than it needs to be, because now it is no longer just about caring for someone. It becomes tied to comparison, fear, and the need to prove something. That is where the suffering deepens. Because the ego is always measuring. It keeps asking, what do they have that I don't? Why do they seem more important than me? What if I lose my place? What if I'm not enough to be chosen? And when those questions keep running in the background, attachment stops feeling like connection and starts feeling like emotional dependence. Now you are not simply attached to a person. You are attached to what that person represents. Validation, status, reassurance, a sense of worth you have not fully built within yourself yet. That is why the loss, the distance, or even the possibility of being overlooked can feel so intense. It is not only the person you fear losing, it is the identity your ego built around being wanted by them. And that is important to understand, because once you see the ego inside the attachment, you stop romanticizing the pain. You stop calling every intense feeling love. Sometimes it is not love at all. Sometimes it is fear wearing the face of love. Sometimes it is the ego panicking because it built too much of your value around being chosen, noticed, or kept. This is why comparison is so dangerous too. The ego loves comparison because comparison keeps insecurity alive. It keeps you looking sideways instead of inward. It keeps you feeling smaller, weaker, and more dependent on external proof that you matter. But the truth is, the moment you place someone above you in your mind, attachment becomes almost inevitable. You start treating their attention like a reward. Their absence starts feeling like rejection. Their behavior begins to define your emotional state far more than it should. That is not because they are more valuable than you. It is because the ego has convinced you that they are. And that lie has to be broken. You have to start seeing that unhealthy attachment often grows where self-worth is still fragile. It grows where the ego is hungry, where the inner world still depends too much on outside confirmation. Once you understand that, detachment becomes more honest. You stop asking only how to stop thinking about someone, and you start asking a deeper question. What part of me still believes I become more valuable when someone chooses me? That is the real work, because the more you heal that part, the less power attachment has over you. The less you compare, the less you cling. The less you need external proof, the less your peace gets pulled around by other people's presence, attention, or approval. And that is where this point really leads you. Attachment often begins where the ego still feels incomplete. So if you want real freedom, you cannot only loosen your grip on others, you also have to heal the part of you that was using them to feel whole. True self-worth removes the need for attachment. The more your self-worth grows, the less desperate your attachments become. That is not because you stop loving. It is because you stop needing other people to do the job that only your own inner foundation was meant to do. When self-worth is weak, attachment becomes intense very quickly. A person's attention feels like proof that you matter. Their affection feels like proof that you are enough. Their presence starts filling emotional spaces you have not yet learned to hold on your own. So naturally, the fear of losing them becomes overwhelming because it feels like you are not only losing a person, it feels like you are losing the thing that was holding your value together. But once real self-worth begins to form inside you, something changes. You still care, you still love, you still appreciate connection, but you no longer treat another human being like the source of your identity. That is a huge difference, because now love is no longer mixed with panic. Affection is no longer tangled with insecurity. You stop needing constant reassurance just to feel stable. You stop searching for your worth in someone's consistency, someone's desire, someone's words, or someone's choice to stay. You begin carrying your value with you. And when that happens, detachment becomes natural, not forced, not cold, natural. You no longer cling to every interaction as if it must confirm your place in the world. You no longer collapse every time someone changes their mood, pulls back, or fails to give you what you hoped they would give. Their actions may still affect you, yes, because you are human, but they no longer define you. That is what self-respect does. It gives you emotional ground to stand on. You stop chasing love from a place of hunger. You stop begging for clarity from people who enjoy keeping things vague. You stop shrinking yourself just to remain desirable, acceptable, or easy to keep. Because something inside you has finally become more solid than your fear of being left. And this matters deeply because unhealthy attachment survives where self-abandonment is still happening. It survives where you keep leaving yourself in order to hold on to someone else. But the stronger your relationship with yourself becomes, the harder it is for attachment to control you in the same old way. You begin asking better questions, not How do I make them stay? But am I staying true to myself in this connection? Not, why don't they validate me enough? But why am I asking them to carry a value I should be building within? That is where healing begins to feel real. True self-worth does not make you arrogant. It makes you peaceful. It removes the old desperation. It teaches you that your value does not rise when someone chooses you, and it does not collapse when someone walks away. Your value remains. And once you truly know that, attachment starts losing its grip. Because the heart no longer reaches outward in fear, it begins relating from wholeness. That is the freedom hidden inside this point. When you love yourself with honesty, when you respect yourself enough to stop trading your peace for attention, and when you stop asking others to complete what should already be rooted inside you, detachment stops feeling painful. It starts feeling like dignity. People enter your life to teach you something. One of the hardest things to accept is that not everyone enters your life to stay. Some people come to love you, some come to challenge you, some come to wake you up, some come to reveal a wound you still have not healed, and some come into your life only long enough to teach you something you could not have learned alone. When you really understand that, detachment becomes softer, because now you stop looking at every ending as a tragedy. You stop assuming that every connection was supposed to last forever, just because it felt important. Sometimes a person was important precisely because they were temporary. Their role was not to remain. Their role was to show you something. Maybe they showed you how deeply you were still seeking validation. Maybe they exposed a pattern you kept repeating. Maybe they taught you what love should never feel like. Maybe they reminded you of your own strength after disappointment. Maybe they opened your heart. Maybe they broke an illusion. Maybe they forced you to see yourself more clearly. That is not meaningless. And when you resist this truth, attachment grows stronger. You keep trying to hold on to people whose lesson has already been given. You keep asking for permanence where life only meant to offer insight. You keep suffering not only because the connection changed, but because you keep fighting the purpose it already served. This is where a gentler perspective helps. Not every person is meant to be your forever person. Not every relationship is meant to become permanent. Not every encounter is meant to turn into a lifelong bond. Some people are part of your path for a season, and that season matters even if it ends. That does not make it fake. That does not make it worthless. That does not make your feelings foolish. It simply means the value of a connection is not measured only by how long it lasts. Sometimes it is measured by how deeply it changes you. Once that idea settles in, you begin holding people differently, with more gratitude and less desperation. You appreciate what they brought, but you stop trying to force every chapter to become the whole book. You stop demanding that every meaningful connection remain forever, just to prove that it mattered. Sometimes it mattered because it changed you and then ended. That is a hard truth, but it can also be a freeing one. Because now, when someone leaves, you can ask a different question. Not only, why did this end? But also, what did this come to teach me? That question turns pain into awareness. It helps you gather the lesson instead of only mourning the loss. And that is where detachment becomes wiser. You begin understanding that life is not only bringing people to comfort you, it is also bringing people to shape you, mirror you, stretch you, and sometimes even confront you with parts of yourself you needed to see. So this point asks you to trust that every connection had a purpose, even if it was not the purpose you hoped for. Some people stay, some people leave, but each one leaves something behind. A truth, a wound, a lesson, a realization, a clearer understanding of who you are. When you start seeing people this way, you stop clinging so hard to their place in your life. You begin receiving the lesson with more maturity, and sometimes that is the real gift they came to give you. Stop creating fantasies about people or situations. A lot of attachment is not built on what is real, it is built on what you imagined. That is why it can feel so intense. You are not only attached to the person, you are attached to the version of them you created in your mind. You are attached to the future you pictured, the conversations you hoped for, the consistency you assumed, the love you thought would eventually appear if you just waited long enough or cared deeply enough. And once fantasy enters the picture, reality starts becoming painful. Not always because reality is cruel, but because it refuses to match the story you built around it. This happens so quietly. You notice a few good moments, a little attention, a certain energy, a possibility, and then the mind starts filling in the rest. It starts writing a full emotional script from very little information. Suddenly, you are no longer relating to what is actually there. You are relating to what you hope it could become. That is where disappointment begins growing long before anything even ends. Because now you are not just reacting to the person's actions, you are reacting to the gap between reality and imagination. And that gap can become emotionally exhausting. You keep waiting for them to become who you pictured. You keep waiting for the situation to turn into what you dreamed. You keep holding on, not to what is present, but to what you believe might happen if enough things finally go the right way. But detachment begins the moment you become honest. Honest about what is actually happening, honest about what is being shown to you, honest about the difference between who someone is and who you keep hoping they will become. That honesty can hurt at first, but it also frees you, because fantasy keeps you emotionally trapped. It keeps feeding hope where clarity is needed. It keeps you loyal to potential while reality keeps giving you different information. And the longer that continues, the harder it becomes to let go, because now you are not just releasing a person or a situation, you are releasing the dream you attach to it. That is why this point matters so much. You have to stop falling in love with imagined versions. You have to stop creating emotional futures that reality has not actually promised you. You have to start looking directly at what is here, not what could be here if everything finally changed. Ask yourself something simple and honest. Am I attached to what this really is, or am I attached to what I keep hoping it will become? That question clears a lot. Because once you stop feeding the fantasy, you start seeing things with more peace. You stop excusing patterns that are already clear. You stop waiting for emotional crumbs to turn into something solid. You stop building your inner life around possibilities that exist mostly in your imagination. And this does not make you cynical, it makes you grounded. You can still hope, you can still care, you can still stay open. But now your heart is standing on truth, not projection. That is where real detachment starts becoming possible. Not when you stop feeling, but when you stop confusing fantasy with reality. Build your own life instead of obsessing over others. Attachment gets stronger when your life becomes too empty around one person or one situation. When there is not enough movement in your own world, the mind starts circling the same thing again and again. You think about them too much, check too much, wait too much, interpret too much. Not always because the connection is so extraordinary, but because too much of your attention has nowhere else meaningful to go. That is why building your own life matters so much. You need something that belongs to you, your goals, your routines, your interests, your work, your health, your inner growth. Something that gives your mind direction so it stops making one person the center of your emotional universe. Because when your world becomes too small, attachment grows larger than it should. You start waiting for their attention as if it is the main event of your day. You begin organizing your mood around whether they show up, respond, or give you enough emotional certainty. And slowly, your life starts revolving around something that was never meant to carry that much weight. The solution is not to pretend you do not care. The solution is to make sure your life has depth outside the attachment. That means you return to yourself in practical ways. You create structure. You take your body seriously. You invest in work that matters to you. You give your mind something useful to build. You let your days contain more than anticipation. This changes the emotional balance. When your life is active, growing, and rooted in things that matter to you, attachment loses some of its intensity. Not because the person becomes meaningless, but because they are no longer the only source of emotional movement in your world. Their presence becomes part of your life, not the thing your whole life depends on. And that is healthier. There is also something important hidden in this point. Obsession often feels like depth, but it is not always depth. Sometimes it is underdeveloped energy with nowhere better to go. Sometimes it is a sign that your own life has been neglected, while too much focus has been placed on someone else's. That is why detachment sometimes begins with a very simple decision. Make your own life fuller, not louder, not busier just to distract yourself. Fuller, full of things that make you feel more present inside yourself, full of effort that strengthens your identity, full of habits that remind you that your life is still yours, even when someone is inconsistent, confusing, distant, or gone. When you build that kind of life, something quiet begins to happen. You stop staring at the door all day. You stop needing constant updates from the outside. You stop treating someone else's attention like the only thing that can make you feel alive. You become harder to emotionally derail because your center is no longer sitting in someone else's hands. And that is the point. If you want to detach, do not only ask how to think about them less. Ask how to live more. Because once your own life becomes rich in meaning, movement, and self-respect, obsession starts losing the space it used to live in. Be willing to let go of what no longer serves you. Letting go is difficult for a reason. It is not only about losing someone or leaving a situation behind. Sometimes it means admitting that what you kept defending in your heart is no longer healthy for your peace. That is the part that hurts. You may still care. You may still remember the good in it. You may still wish it had become something different. But none of that automatically means it still belongs in your life. Some connections stay in your heart longer than they stay right for your future. Some situations keep taking from you long after they stop giving anything back. This is where honesty becomes necessary. You have to look at what this person, this relationship, or this chapter is actually producing inside you. Does it leave you feeling more grounded, more respected, more at peace with yourself? Or does it leave you restless, confused, drained, and emotionally scattered? That answer tells you more than your attachment does. Because staying is not always love. Sometimes it is fear wearing the face of loyalty. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of accepting that something meaningful has reached its limit. And when fear becomes the reason you keep holding on, your attachment starts costing you more than you want to admit. This is why detachment asks for courage. Quiet courage. The kind that allows you to say, "This mattered to me, but it is no longer good for me." The kind that stops confusing suffering with devotion. The kind that understands that protecting your peace is not selfish and it is not betrayal. You do not need to hate what you are releasing. You do not need to ruin the memory of it. You do not need to convince yourself that it meant nothing just to find the strength to walk away. Some things can be real, important, and still no longer aligned with the life you are trying to build. That is what makes letting go such a mature act. You stop asking only whether something once felt special, and you start asking whether it still fits the person you are becoming. That question changes everything, because now you are no longer choosing from nostalgia. You are choosing from truth. And truth has a cleaner energy. The more willing you become to release what no longer serves your growth, your dignity, or your stability, the more room life has to bring you something healthier. Not because every ending is easy, but because space matters. When your emotional world is full of what has already expired, there is very little room left for what is honest, mutual, and alive. So this point is really about self-respect, about understanding that not everything you love is meant to be carried forever. Some things are meant to be appreciated, learned from, and then released with grace. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop trying to save what has already stopped being right for you. Avoid comparison and the illusion of social media. A lot of attachment gets stronger in places where reality is already distorted. That is one of the reasons social media can quietly intensify emotional dependence. You are not only seeing other people, you are seeing edited moments, filtered identities, carefully selected highlights, and fragments of lives presented in a way that can make your own reality feel smaller than it is. If you stay in that space too long, the mind starts absorbing false standards without even asking permission. Now, someone else's relationship looks perfect, someone else's life looks effortless, someone else's confidence looks natural, someone else's happiness looks complete. And once that happens, comparison begins doing its damage. You start measuring your life against images that were never meant to tell the whole truth. You begin feeling behind, less chosen, less attractive, less successful, less fulfilled. Then attachment grows from that insecurity, because now you are not only attached to a person or a situation, you are attached to an idea of what your life should look like based on illusions you have been feeding your mind. That is dangerous, because comparison pulls you out of your own life. It teaches you to stare sideways instead of inward. It weakens gratitude. It disturbs self-worth. It makes your current reality feel inadequate, even when the standard you are using was never real to begin with. This is why detachment requires a more disciplined relationship with what you consume. You have to notice what happens to your inner world after certain kinds of exposure. Does it leave you clearer, calmer, more grounded in yourself? Or does it leave you agitated, hungry, and emotionally unsettled? That difference matters. Sometimes the attachment is not growing because the connection itself is so powerful. Sometimes it is growing because your mind keeps returning to a false image and treating it like reality. A person seems more desirable because you only see the version they present. A lifestyle seems more fulfilling because you only see the polished surface. A relationship looks worth envying because you never see what is hidden behind the frame. And if you are not careful, you begin longing for illusions. That kind of longing is exhausting because it keeps your heart tied to things that may not even exist in the form you imagine. It also makes you undervalue what is real, simple, and present in your own life. So this point is not about rejecting social media completely. It is about refusing to let illusion train your emotions. It is about protecting your mind from constant exposure to comparisons that serve no healthy purpose. It is about remembering that what is visible is rarely the full truth, and that your peace becomes fragile when you keep measuring your life against edited fragments. The more you step away from that trap, the more your nervous system calms down. You stop chasing appearances. You stop building emotional fantasies around what you see. You return to something far more stable, which is your actual life, your actual values, your actual path. And that is where detachment becomes easier, because once you stop feeding comparison, you stop strengthening the insecurity that makes attachment feel so overwhelming in the first place. Happiness cannot be found outside yourself. This point takes time to accept, because for a long time it can seem true that the next thing will finally settle you. The right person, the better job, more money, more security, more recognition. Something outside you starts looking like the missing piece, and the mind quietly builds a promise around it. Once this happens, I'll finally feel at peace. But that promise keeps moving. You reach one thing and relief comes for a moment. Then the mind starts searching again. Another goal, another person, another version of life that seems as if it will complete what still feels unsettled inside. That is why chasing happiness outside yourself can become endless. It keeps offering hope, but it does not give lasting stability. This is exactly where attachment becomes dangerous. When you believe a person, a possession, or an achievement will finally make you whole, you start relating to it with too much emotional weight. You no longer simply appreciate it, you depend on it. And once dependence begins, fear comes with it. Fear of losing it, fear of not getting it, Fear that without it, you will go back to feeling incomplete. That is a heavy way to live, because now happiness is always somewhere else, somewhere ahead of you, somewhere outside you, somewhere waiting to arrive through a circumstance you cannot fully control. And when the heart lives like that for too long, peace begins to feel conditional. Stoicism brings you back to something steadier. It reminds you that external things can add comfort, beauty, pleasure, and meaning to life, but they cannot create a solid inner life for you. They can support your experience, but they cannot become the foundation of it. That foundation has to be built within. It is built in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you carry pain, in the way you respond to disappointment, in the way you return to yourself when life does not give you what you hoped for. That is where durable peace begins, not in possession, but in inner order. And this does not mean you stop wanting things. It means you stop asking them to save you. You can love someone deeply without asking them to become your source of worth. You can enjoy success without making it the measure of your identity. You can pursue beautiful things in life without turning them into emotional requirements for your well-being. That shift changes everything. Because now you are no longer reaching outward from emptiness. You are relating to life from a fuller place. You are able to receive joy without clinging to it. You are able to lose things without feeling that your whole self is collapsing with them. That is real freedom. So this point asks you to become very honest. When you say, "I just need this one thing to be happy," is that actually true? Or is your mind repeating an old habit of postponing peace until life meets a condition? Sit with that question. Because once you stop searching for happiness outside yourself, attachment starts loosening on its own. You stop turning people and outcomes into emotional lifelines. You begin building a calmer relationship with life, where good things are welcomed, but your inner world is not built on whether they stay. And that is where detachment starts feeling less like loss and more like stability. You are the only person who will always be with you. At some point, this becomes impossible to ignore. People change. Some stay close, some drift away, some love you well, and some only know how to love you in fragments. Situations change too. Seasons end, plans fall apart, roles disappear. Versions of life that once felt permanent suddenly become memories. But through all of that, one person remains, you. That is not a lonely thought, it is a grounding one. Because the stronger your relationship with yourself becomes, the less terrified you feel of abandonment, distance, and change. You stop treating other people as if they are your last chance to feel loved, seen, or safe. You stop panicking every time someone becomes inconsistent, because your emotional foundation is no longer entirely built on whether they stay steady. This is where emotional independence begins. Not in isolation, not in pretending you do not need anyone, but in understanding that your deepest companionship has to be with yourself. If you do not know how to sit with yourself, support yourself, calm yourself, and respect yourself, then attachment will keep becoming too intense, because every outside connection will feel like a rescue mission. And that is too much weight to place on another person. The truth is, your relationship with yourself shapes every other relationship in your life. If you are always abandoning yourself, you will tolerate things that hurt you. If you keep doubting your own value, you will cling to anyone who offers temporary reassurance. If being alone feels unbearable, you will hold on to people long after the connection stops being good for you. That is why this point matters so much. You are the one who has to learn how to stay. Stay with yourself in sadness without running. Stay with yourself in uncertainty without collapsing. Stay with yourself when someone leaves without deciding that their leaving says everything about your worth. That kind of inner loyalty changes you. It makes you less available for emotional chaos. It makes you less likely to accept half love just to avoid loneliness. It gives you a deeper sense of safety, because now your nervous system is not constantly waiting for another person to provide the stability you have not yet built inside. And once that relationship with yourself starts becoming stronger, detachment no longer feels like punishment. It starts feeling like maturity. You understand that people can add beauty to your life, but they are not meant to become your entire emotional structure. You can appreciate presence without fearing absence so much. You can love someone and still know that if life changes, you are not left with nothing. You are still with you. That is a powerful shift. Because when you truly become your own safe place, attachment loosens in a healthy way. You stop begging life to keep every person close at all costs. You stop negotiating your peace just to avoid being alone. You stop treating abandonment like the end of you. It is not the end of you. You are still here. And the more deeply you learn to stand by yourself, the less power other people have to shake your emotional world every time they move. Focus on personal growth and self-development. A big part of detachment becomes easier when your energy stops going only into what happened outside you and starts going into what is happening within you. Because if all your attention stays fixed on the person, the loss, the confusion, or the situation that hurt you, your inner world stays stuck in the same place. You keep replaying the same questions, the same emotions, the same wounds, and after a while, it can feel like your whole life has been reduced to reacting to something that already took too much from you. This is where personal growth becomes essential. Not as a trend, not as a performance, not as a way to look strong while still falling apart inside. Real growth is quieter than that. It is the honest work of sitting with yourself and asking what still needs healing, what patterns keep repeating, what fears keep pulling you into unhealthy attachment, and what part of you still believes peace has to come from someone else. That kind of work changes everything, because once you begin focusing on your own development, the center of your life starts returning to you. You stop making every emotional struggle only about the other person. You begin looking at your own inner structure, your boundaries, your self-respect, your habits, your wounds, your ability to regulate your emotions and tell yourself the truth. That is where security is built. Healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like catching yourself before you send the message you already know comes from panic. Sometimes it looks like admitting that you were chasing reassurance instead of connection. Sometimes it looks like resting, reading, reflecting, going to therapy, writing honestly, taking care of your body, or finally facing something you have been distracting yourself from for too long. All of that matters, because the stronger your inner world becomes, the less likely you are to build your life around unhealthy attachment. You begin noticing things sooner. You stop abandoning yourself so quickly. You recover faster when life disappoints you. You become less attracted to emotional chaos, because something in you no longer mistakes intensity for meaning. That is growth doing its work. And there is something else here that matters. Personal development gives pain a direction. Instead of asking only how to stop feeling, you begin asking how to become wiser through what you are feeling. That changes the quality of your suffering. It turns it from a loop into a process, from repetition into transformation. You begin becoming someone who can hold more truth, more peace, more self-awareness. And from that place, detachment no longer feels like you are losing everything. It starts feeling like you are finally becoming someone who can live without clinging. So this point is really an invitation to come back to your own life in a deeper way. Use this season to know yourself better. Strengthen what is weak. Heal what is still open. Build what has been neglected. Give your attention to the version of you that is trying to grow through this, not just the part that is still grieving what did not work out. Because the more seriously you take your own growth, the less power unhealthy attachment has to shape your future. Trust that life has abundance and opportunities. A lot of attachment becomes unbearable when your mind starts believing that this was your only chance. That person, that relationship, that opportunity, that version of life. It begins to feel as if everything important was locked inside that one door, and now that the door is closing or changing, your whole future is shrinking with it. That is what makes letting go feel so frightening. It is not always the loss itself. Sometimes it is the belief that nothing else will come, nothing better, nothing meaningful, nothing that will reach you in the same way. And when the mind falls into that belief, it clings harder than it should, because it is no longer holding on out of love alone. It is holding on out of scarcity. But life is bigger than the moment you are grieving, bigger than one person, bigger than one chapter, bigger than one missed possibility. This is where trust matters. Not blind optimism, not pretending everything is fine. Real trust. The kind that says, I may not see what is next yet, but I refuse to believe my life ended at this one point. That shift makes detachment possible, because once you stop thinking in terms of emotional scarcity, your grip begins to soften. You no longer treat one loss as proof that love is gone forever. You no longer read one disappointment as evidence that life has finished offering you beautiful things. You begin understanding that life keeps moving, and with it come new people, new chances, new forms of peace, and new versions of yourself that you have not even met yet. Sometimes the reason you cannot release what is leaving is that you do not yet trust what could arrive. That is understandable, but it is also where growth asks more from you. You have to make room in your mind for the idea that life is not limited to what you currently see, that what is gone is not always the best you will ever know, that the future is not empty just because the present feels unfamiliar. There are seasons you have not lived yet, people you have not met yet, opportunities you cannot recognize yet because they have not appeared in front of you. This is why trust creates emotional freedom. It reminds you that letting go is not the same as falling into nothingness. Sometimes it is how you stop blocking what is trying to enter next. And this does not mean everything will come quickly. It does not mean the next chapter appears the moment you close the last one. It simply means you stop living as if this one attachment was your final source of meaning. That belief is too small for a life as wide as yours. So this last point asks you to loosen the fear that says, this was it. Maybe it was important. Maybe it was beautiful. Maybe it hurt deeply. But that still does not mean it was all life had for you. Trust that life is not done with you. Trust that new opportunities do not always announce themselves early. Trust that what leaves can create space. Trust that what is meant to grow in your life often needs room that attachment refuses to give it. And once you begin trusting that, detachment stops feeling like the end of possibility. It starts feeling like the beginning of openness. So when you really look at detachment, it is not about becoming cold, distant, or emotionally numb. It is about coming back to yourself. It is about refusing to let another person's behavior decide the state of your inner world. It is about seeing where ego, insecurity, fantasy, and comparison have made your attachments heavier than they needed to be. It is about learning how to care without losing your center, how to release without hating, and how to move forward without feeling that your life has been emptied just because one chapter changed. That is the deeper lesson in all of this. You are allowed to love. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to be affected by life. But you are also allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to stop clinging to what keeps wounding you. You are allowed to choose self-respect over emotional dependence. You are allowed to trust that your life is still unfolding, even when something important is ending. And maybe that is where real detachment begins, not in forcing yourself not to care, but in caring without abandoning yourself. Because the more rooted you become in your own worth, your own growth, your own inner steadiness, the less terrified you feel of people leaving, situations changing, or life moving in a direction you did not plan. You begin to understand something very freeing. What is meant to stay will not need your desperation. What needs to leave cannot be healed by your grip. And what belongs to your future will need a version of you that knows how to open the hand not just close it. So if your heart has been tired, let this be the shift. Come back to yourself. Build your life again from the inside. Release what is no longer right for your peace. And trust that life still has more for you than what you are trying so hard not to lose. Because detachment is not the end of love. It is the beginning of freedom,